We are rural women. We are strong. We're ambitious. We're leaders. And we inspire. Some of us are mothers and caregivers, partners, workers and community members, friends. And we don't do it alone. We seek community, connection, and representation of people like us. 100 Rural Women plants that seed. We aim to cultivate a community that empowers rural women and lifts one another up. Welcome to our Spotlight series, where we interview amazing women who are making a difference for rural communities across Minnesota, because we believe that women like you deserve a spotlight. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, what you do, your organization, and kind of your connection with 100 Rural Women?
Sure. So my name is Monica Kramer McConkey, and I live just outside of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. I own a consulting business called Eyes on the Horizon Consulting, and it focuses on mental health, primarily mental health in rural areas, with a focus on mental health in the agriculture communities. So I do a lot of training and educating around mental health topics and issues, both on the farm, rural mental health issues, and workplace, mental health in the workplace. And I also provide direct service counseling to people in rural areas, specifically farmers and their families.
Okay, cool. So do you go to them then, since it's, a little bit further distance, and I'm sure you work with quite a range?
Yeah, I do. So I put miles on the vehicle. That's just part of the given in rural areas. I was gonna say rural Minnesota, but rural anywhere. So I give them a choice, whatever they're most comfortable with. I'm accessible by phone at any time. We can set up Zoom meetings, Zoom sessions, or I can be in person, just kind of depending on where they are. So yeah, I do all three. I definitely prefer face-to-face, especially if there's multiple people involved. It's just easier. And I think it's easier for them as well in most cases.
I do have a question about,
Sure.
with the pandemic, do you feel like that gave people greater access, or did you build more of a client base because people were able to, you know, consult with you whether or not they could do it in person, or not so much because technology may not have been available, or Wi-Fi,
Right.
strong connections and things like that?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. So I think there are, I guess you could say, positive consequences of the pandemic. And one is that we were forced to boost our capabilities of reaching people through technology. And we did it like quickly. And so that was a positive. I think it opened the door for a lot of teletherapy in general, telemedicine, conferences going online, so people gained more access. And that was all good. The issues we run into in the rural part of the state is exactly what you said, that there are definite broadband problems. And I know the legislature is, working on some initiatives around that. So yeah, broadband problems. And then another issue that's often overlooked is the population in rural parts of the state are aging. And so there's some disconnect with technology in some cases. And there's also just very real barriers like hearing issues, where a lot of the farmers I work with have hearing loss, and for them to communicate over a computer, over the phone is rough.
Yeah, it's not always just about, do you have a computer or not? And sometimes that is a
Mhm.
big barrier too.
It is. Yeah, that's very true.
So, with that, what is your connection or your background with rural America and why you chose to focus on rural?
Sure. So I grew up in a very rural setting. I grew up on a farm that my great grandfather started, both on my mom's side and my dad's side, I guess, two farm connections. So grew up in a farm family, was in 4-H and FFA and showed cattle at the county fairs and all that good stuff, and worked in the field and uh, attended a rural school. And so my life was really based in rural. And so as I as I started my career after grad school, I really felt drawn to the rural focus of mental health. So I spent really the last 25 years, my entire career, in rural areas, in different mental health aspects of the mental health field. So I did direct service work in a school setting, and it was on the White Earth Indian Reservation, actually, um, serving that rural area. And I went on to be an administrator in a mental health agency based out of Bemidji, serving rural counties in north central Minnesota. Um, and then on to I worked for a psychiatric hospital located in Fargo, which served North Dakota, Minnesota. Um, so a very rural focus that we drew from. And then of course my work now is all around rural. So yeah, it's really been an integral part of my life that I have just been drawn to the rural um, communities. I guess it's part of who I am. It's in my heart and soul. And yeah, I just love it.
With your practice, is there a
Mhm.
specific region of the state that you focus on?
So no, I have a contract through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture
Okay.
to serve Minnesota farmers and farm families. And that's statewide, but there are two of us. So my counterpart is based in the southern part of the state. So I technically cover like central Minnesota and northern Minnesota, but I do have clients in the southern part of the state. And most of them are female because he's my counterpart is a male. And so I feel like a lot of it is they just want another female to connect with and talk to, and have that understanding of issues around being a mom, being a female working in a man's world. Agriculture is still very much thought of as a man's world. And so that's been a nice opportunity that even though I'm kind of in this part of the state, I can connect with people in the southern part of the state as well, primarily women.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit more about Eyes on the Horizon Consulting?
Sure. So I started Eyes on the Horizon in 2016, and kind of funny story. And I don't know how much of this you're going to want to highlight, but at the time I was working full time, but I was getting a lot of requests to do speaking and training around farm stress and farm mental health. And so I started my business while working full time, and I went to my boss, who was a male, and I just said, just so you know, I'm doing this kind of on the side. It will not hinder my performance or fulfillment of my job duties here, um, but I just want to be upfront and let you know. And his response to me was, "Oh, so you're telling me, not asking me?" And I was like, pretty much, yes. And so, there was no way I was going to ask for permission to pursue my own business. Um, so, yeah, I built it over the course of a couple of years while working full time, and mainly just through networking and connections. And I rarely say no to an opportunity, especially when I was getting my business started, because I just felt like that was what I needed to do to get rolling and establish connections. And then on October 1st of 2019, when I finalized the contract with the state of Minnesota, then I was able to go full time in my business. So I quit my job and have been doing this full time. And it's just been wonderful to experience I would have never dreamt I would be doing this in my life. I mean, it's just such a blessing. And I'm a Christian, and I just feel like, everybody has a purpose for their life. And I feel like when you're ready for your opportunities, when they come and you're willing to work hard, that, things fall into place in a way that you could have never even dreamt. And so I do a mix of my direct service work, meeting with clients. I have a contract in North Dakota to do some training around a disaster grant that they got after some flooding events. And so I do a lot of work on the North Dakota side, as well as my work on the Minnesota side. And I also work with some employers to do workplace mental health. So yeah, it's exciting. It's dynamic. It's every day is different. I control my schedule. So I just love it. I love my work. I love what I do. And like I said, I never dreamt that I would have this opportunity. So I feel very blessed.
I love to hear that. I feel like, and it's not so much that it's a lot, but I feel like a lot of people do things that they don't love.
Yeah, all the time.
But it's really inspiring to hear that too, because, starting my own business is something I would love to do someday. And you were able to do it while having another job, and then eventually kind of break off and start doing it full time. And I think that that'll be really encouraging for other rural women that hear this too, because I think that there's plenty of them that maybe want to be doing something or have something in their heart, but they just don't feel like it's been represented for a woman,
Right.
for a woman to do that. And
Right. And the financial constrictions, I mean, there's that security that comes with the job and benefits, and so branching off on your own, I mean, it's scary because you leave a little bit of that security. But again, exactly what you said. I think when you're in a position of working where you're passionate and you put yourself out there, I think doors open. And I know doors open and doors close, but it leads you in the path that you're meant to go. And so it's kind of this balance of taking the opportunity when the doors open and not being discouraged when the doors close, and believing there's something else out there that, I look back in my career and I had applied for different jobs and things and didn't get them. And at the time I was just devastated because I was like, I really want this, and it would have been more money or whatever. It would have been something I thought I wanted to do. But looking back now, it would have led me in a completely different direction. And so it's kind of trusting your higher power, whatever that is, that there's some guidance in life leading you in the path that you're meant to go. To fulfill your purpose. I 100% believe that. And it's all about being open to opportunity, being willing to work hard, and putting yourself out there.
it's a positive mindset for sure.
Yes. Yep.
But
yes.
I mean, like you just talked about, you experienced some disappointments and discouragements. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe, like, if you can think of a big one or one that you feel like, okay, yeah, now that happened, this worked out?
Well, I can, and this is very personal. This is not even on the career side of things, but I think women can relate to this. So I was in a marriage for 14 years that was not healthy. And I personally, it was just not good. It was toxic. it kept me from being the person I knew I could be. It kept me from exploring paths that would reach other people. Like I knew this is, I exist for a purpose, and my purpose isn't being fulfilled because I'm in this ickiness. I'm in this icky relationship filled with toxicity and emotional abuse. And but I had 3 kids. I had 3 little kids. And so it was very hard, very, very hard. And I remember just, lots of tears, lots of pain. And ultimately, I filed for a divorce and I left. And so then it was kind of a few years of, rebuilding my life and reestablishing who I was as a person. And my career at that point then took off. And my focus, of course, was on nurturing the kids and helping them through that transition. But I will tell you that I could have stayed bitter and in a victim mindset from that whole experience. And I could have stayed stuck. But I didn't. I kind of put it behind me. I went to therapy, and my focus was very forward facing. I forgave. I didn't hold on to things. I didn't ruminate about things. I just moved on. And in that moving on, that led to a lot of really great open doors. But ultimately, the blessing from that whole experience was that when I work with women now who are in very difficult relationships, I can empathize with them and help them and understand them in a way I never, ever could have before. Mm. And so now that I'm on the other side of that pain, it's a tool for me to help others. And if I had stayed in that, even after the divorce, if I had stayed in that mindset or held on to anger or resentment, it wouldn't have helped me get through. And so when you talk about going through like disappointment and difficult times, I firmly believe it's all about, learn your lesson. Is there lessons to be learned here? Learn your lesson, and then don't stay stuck there. Move on, move forward. Don't hold on to the ickiness. If you've got to change your mindset around something, change your mindset, change your thinking, and get up and go. And that's, it's not always easy. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's power in forgiveness and moving forward and letting go of what doesn't serve you and moving forward.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that here. I know that that's a more personal side, but I really appreciate that. And I think our audience will as well, because while you have created this amazing career for yourself, that's not all of who you are. And right. That is sometimes what we focus on when we think of, oh, well, this person's successful. Well, but you're successful in other ways because you had life stuff too.
Yeah.
It's just about your career. And
right.
Do you feel like being rural makes a difference in that, or in what way? Like I feel like there's a consider.
That is so interesting that that's a really interesting point that I didn't really ever think about in terms of being rural. But I tell you what, and this goes way, way, way back, in rural areas, you are known. And your family is known and your grandparents are known. It's like there's this legacy that you're known. And so it's hard for anything to happen without it being kind of in the spotlight. And so, yes, I think there's definitely a difference, and I've never lived, I mean, other than like short spurts of time in college in urban areas, but I can tell you that throughout the divorce, I was judged and very much felt like, and I actually reread The Scarlet Letter and watched the movie because I just felt like that was how I was being judged. Like, how dare you as a female and a mom choose to leave a marriage that for in everybody else's view was good and sound and solid. And my pastor called me to his office and had a chat with me. And shortly after I left the church, because of the way both he and the assistant pastor handled it, I guarantee you that my ex was not brought to the office and talked to. And so, yes, I do. I never thought about it before, but I definitely do think there's a difference in going through difficult times like that in a rural setting versus urban, because there's no blending in. There's no, stuff happening under the radar. It is like out there. Everybody's going to talk about it. Everybody knows you. Everybody knows your family. So there's no kind of escaping it. There's no blending in. So yeah, really interesting question to think back on now. And then you don't ever, as long as you stay in that community or anywhere in the surrounding communities, you never get away from that story being attached to you. So you don't, I listen to my parents talk about people from, 50 years ago where things happened. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do you even remember that? But it's, it just becomes a part of your story in that community that you don't get away from. So yeah, that's probably more the downside of rural communities. And when you even talk about like mental health, so someone in a rural community that needs to go to like substance use treatment or needs to be hospitalized after a suicide attempt, I mean, the stigma that attaches to them in that community, huge, because they're known and their family is known. And yeah, it's a whole different kind of an experience.
You think about, I mean, anywhere this would be tough, but especially somewhere where people know you and they know your family and they think that they know what everything that they need to, is that even people that might, that they survive a mental health crises, there's so much backlash after the fact that it's like, oh my gosh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's brutal. Yep. And people seem to have a lot to say about things that they don't fully understand.
That is exactly right. And it's like you're living in a glass house. And so just the stigma around seeking mental health services in rural areas, it's getting better and it's becoming more of a conversation, but still really huge. It's such a different mindset in a rural community when you're a known entity. So if you think about being in a position of leadership in a rural community and struggling, that's even like all eyes are on you, almost anticipating or waiting for a failure to come. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, even anywhere, there's this idea that therapy is for people who have problems. But
yeah.
The thing is that everyone does.
Everyone. That's right. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Are just the ones doing something about it.
And yeah, that's very true.
I really appreciate that there's more discussion about mental health and resources going on in the media. I think that there's still a way to go as far as stigma goes, especially with certain mental illnesses.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to see I won't keep you too much longer, but I
Yeah.
do want to ask one more question just to round it
Sure.
off. If you could give a piece of advice to your former self,
Hmm.
what would it be?
Gosh, my former self, I think it is around, like what I wrote is, don't underestimate your ability to impact the lives of others. But within that, you also, it's so important to be true to yourself.
Mm,
And I think oftentimes as females, we grow up being people pleasers, and we, feel happy only when the people around us are happy, or we feel fulfilled only when we feel like we're serving others. So the gist of it is, if people around us aren't happy or aren't fulfilled or upset, we often feel like we have to make that right, and we lose sense of ourselves in that.
mm,
And so when we become a spouse or a mom, it's like we're out here all the time. We're making things okay for everybody else, and we lose who we are in that process. And so when I look back at my younger self, I was very much a people pleaser. So it's like being feeling like I am valuable, that I am empowered, that I have a purpose. I wished I would have realized that more versus just kind of putting myself out there. But within that, I think it, like what I wrote, don't underestimate your ability to impact the lives of others, because I think that's something that we often feel like we don't possess, that what we have to say or what we have to share is not that important. But it is important, and it does touch people, and at the same time it empowers us. And then my second thing was, you exist for a purpose, and not to lose sight of that um, there's a purpose. And when your purpose and your passion align, whether in your personal life or in your career, it's a really powerful and fulfilling place to be.
mm. It's just all really good advice for people of all ages too. Uh,
Yeah.
there's people my age and people 10 years older than me that are struggling with the same idea, especially as a woman.
Yes.
We are kind of taught to put others first, and then
Yeah.
it's really hard to manage that because also being humble is like seems to be put at the utmost importance, but I think it's important, but also a little bit overrated, because I think it's okay to celebrate your accomplishments and to put yourself.
Absolutely. And that is something that at least women in my generation were not taught. It was, you do not talk highly of yourself. You don't put yourself first. You know, it's okay for men to do that. That was the message.
Mhm,
But for women to do that is seen as like arrogance.
mhm,
And so an assertive female was seen, it was equated to like being aggressive. And assertive and aggressive are two very different things.
mhm.
Being assertive is a positive trait. And yeah, we don't, as women, we don't always get that kind of feedback. Kind of like me telling my boss that I was doing my business on the side, and him basically wanting me to have asked him permission to do that first.
It's
It's
okay.
like, no, that's not how it
You
works.
can.
Yeah. And I'm fairly certain if I had been a male sitting in that same chair saying those same words, it probably would have been a very different reaction.
Yeah, you would have been a go-getter.
Yeah. Yes. And he probably would have talked about, oh, what do you have going on? And good for you. And yeah, it would have been very different. I'm guessing, I'm assuming
Yeah.
it would have been a very different conversation.
Yeah. And that also leads back to like men can have that sense of superiority and entitlement where he said,
Yes.
you didn't ask me. Why did you have to ask him? It has nothing to do with him. It wasn't,
Yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, well,
We're getting there. We're getting there.
thank you so much for all of your amazing words this morning and for
Yeah.
taking the time to meet with me. This is a great way to start the morning, and